There is hardly a more common thing in the whole world than a person going to bed at night, and hardly a more quietly important one. For a great many folks, sleep is the thing they cut first when the days grow busy, the thing that gets borrowed against, the thing pushed to the edges of life and trimmed back to make room for everything else. And because it is so common and so quiet, there is a great deal of talk about it, and much of that talk is unfair. On the one side you will hear it called nearly worthless, a thing for the lazy, a thing the great and productive do without. On the other side you will hear it treated as though it were a science project, a thing to be measured and charted and scored, where the only good night is the perfect night, scored by a little ring on the wrist, and the plain truth, as usual, sits quiet in the middle, calmer and fairer than either. So let me give you the plain, honest truth about sleep. A fair look at the night, the real good of it, the real downside, and the real way our bodies tend to it, without the boasting and without the ring on the wrist. I will tell you plainly where I stand at the start, so you know my mind. I am not here to shame you out of your late nights, nor to frighten you about an hour lost here or there. Sleep is a plain, ordinary need, like water and bread, and a body short on it will let you know. For most folks, getting enough of it most nights is one of the most useful things they can do, and it costs nothing and sells nothing. It is also a real and powerful thing, and to lean on too little of it night after night is not a small choice, but a quietly costly one, and worth understanding plainly. So I will give you the fair truth, both sides of it plainly, and let you make your own sensible grown-up choice, which is how a grown person ought to be treated. Not scolded, told the truth, and trusted to choose. I am Hosea Lapp. I am Amish. Thee and I keep bees and run a small sawmill in Mifflin County, Pennsylvania. My people came over from the Emmental in Switzerland by way of the Palatinate, and they settled on this ground in 1752, which is a long time to be in one place, and a long time to learn the plain ways of a body. And I am not a doctor. If you have a real trouble that touches on this, a sleep that will not come, a doctor who has told you to mind your nights. That is your doctor's word to follow, not mine. What I am giving you is the plain, fair truth about an ordinary nightly need. Good sense, evenly spoken, the quick word before I go on. The old methods my people kept for sleep and rest, and the plain habits that gave them steady energy through long days of work. There is far more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book at hoselap.com. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. Now let me start with the fair good of sleep, for it has some, and the hustlers never tell you that part. A body that gets enough sleep most nights is not a small thing. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful things a person can do for their own health and sharpness, and even their temper. And it costs nothing, and it asks only that you give up an hour or two of the evening, which the hustlers will tell you makes you wealthy. Though the careful studies of the body say otherwise, when you sleep, and sleep in the natural way the body wants, the several plain and careful things happen that no cup of coffee and no ring on the wrist can do for you. Your brain quiets. A chemical that has been building up in you all day, called adenosine, slowly drains away as you sleep, and with it goes the heavy fog of being long awake. Your memory tidies itself. The pieces of your day are sorted and filed so that you can find them again in the morning. Your mood resets so that yesterday's small troubles do not ride into today on your back. Your hunger gets its proper footing so that tomorrow you eat because you are hungry and not because your body is confused. And, in a way, the scientists are still sorting out the deeper housekeeping of the brain. The slow clearing of the day's waste runs mostly at night in the deep quiet hours. None of this requires a device. The none of it requires a perfect score. It requires only that you sleep, and sleep enough, most nights, and that you let your body do what it is plainly built to do, which it has been doing, without charts and without rings, since before there were any of us. So let us begin fairly. Enough sleep, most nights for most folks, is one of the quiet goods of a life. And there is no cause to feel guilty about giving it the hours it asks. Now let me clear away two of the boasts you will hear oftenest, because they are overblown, and I want to give you the fair truth of them. The first boast is the hustler's boast, and you have heard it 100 times, that the great and successful do with very little sleep, and that if you would only harden yourself, you too could live on 5 hours a night and be the better for it. Now here is the honest, careful truth of it. The careful studies have looked at this head-on, and what they have found is plain. There is a small number of folks, well under 5% of the population, who carry a rare genetic variation that lets them genuinely thrive on short sleep, and that is real and uncommon and a matter of birth, not of will. For the other 95% and more, sleeping 5 hours a night or less, night after night, is not a path to greatness. It is a slow subtraction. The careful work has found that sleeping less than 7 hours a night on a regular basis is tied meaningfully to poorer glucose control, that is, the body's handling of blood sugar, to higher evening cortisol, that is, the stress hormone that should be low at night, and to a reaction time so slowed that after about 17 hours of being awake, a person performs about as poorly on a simple test as if they had a blood alcohol level over the legal driving limit, the 17 hours. That is not a week of pulling all-nighters. That is a normal day that simply ran long. So the plain, fair truth is this. The hustler's boast that you can train yourself to need less sleep is, for nearly everybody, a boast without foundation. The body does not learn to need less sleep. It learns to cope with not getting it. And the cost of that coping is quiet and real, and shows up in places the hustler never measures. In your temper, in your judgment, in your blood sugar, in your ability to think clearly when the meeting goes long. Now I will be fair to the hustler too, where fairness allows. There are times in a life, a baby new in the house, a barn to finish before the weather turns, a sick one to tend through the night, when sleep is small and must be small, and a body has reserves for that and draws on them. That is a true thing. But reserves are not a routine. A reserve drawn on night after night is a reserve spent. Then a body spent of its reserves tends to break down quietly in the same quiet ways. So do not build your week on 5 hours of sleep and call it discipline. Give the body what it asks. Most nights, thee and the hustler's boasting will quiet of its own accord. The second boast is the newer's boast, and I want to be fair and plain here because it is so often sold in a pretty package. That you must track your sleep with a ring or a watch or an app and score it and chase the perfect score, or your nights are a waste. Now here is the honest, careful truth of that too. The little sleep trackers can be useful in a modest way. Many of them will tell you, in a rough way, whether you slept or did not, whether you woke and tossed for an hour, whether your night was unusually broken. That is a fair thing to know. But what they do not so often tell you, and what the careful clinicians have begun to say out loud, is that chasing the perfect score can itself become a small trouble. There are folks now who lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, not because they cannot sleep, but because they are waiting to see if tonight will be a good score. And the waiting keeps them awake. And the bad score then troubles their day. And the trouble of the day then troubles the next night, and the round goes. The clinicians have given this a name already, orthosomnia, which is the obsession with sleeping perfectly according to the data, and it is its own quiet thief of the very sleep it tries to measure. And the second plain trouble with the tracker is this. They are not fully doctors. They estimate. They use motion and heart rate and breath to guess at the stages of the night, and the studies have shown they are often off, especially for the quieter stages, sometimes by a meaningful amount across the whole night. They are a tool, not a verdict. They are not a doctor's reading of your brain. So the fair truth is this. A sleep tracker used as a modest guide now and then is fine. The same way a kitchen scale used now and then is fine. But to build your nights around its score, to lose sleep over losing sleep, to believe that you are not properly resting unless the ring tells you so, is to let a small machine become the master of a large need. Trust the simpler signs the body gives you. If you wake without an alarm and feel clear in the head and steady in your temper, you have likely slept well enough. If you need 3 cups of coffee before you feel like a person, and your hand shakes a little between them, you likely have not. The body has been scoring its own sleep correctly, in its own quiet way, since long before any of us a ring to wear. Now, having been fair to sleep, let me be equally fair about its real downside when it goes short, for it has one, and it is worth understanding plainly, because this is the part with real truth in it that the boasting leaves out. The real matter with too little sleep is this. It does not just make you tired. That is the part everyone knows. The part that matters is what the tiredness quietly does, underneath night after night, that you do not at first notice. The first thing that a short night does underneath is this, that it scrambles the body's handling of sugar. The careful studies have shown, more than once now, that even 1 week of sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night measurably reduces the body's response to insulin, which is the signal that helps your cells take sugar out of the blood and use it as fuel. That is the same signal, working poorly, that sits at the root of the diabetes troubles that so many folks now carry. It does not happen overnight, and it is not a sentence. But the quiet arithmetic of short nights, night after night, month after month, year after year, runs in that direction. So the body's handling of sugar is one real cost. The second real cost is this. Short nights raise the stress hormone. Cortisol, which should be falling through the evening, so that you can let go of the day and drift off, stays higher when the sleep is short, and stays higher through the night, and stays higher into the next day. That is not a small thing. A body with cortisol running too high too much of the time is a body that stores fuel too eagerly in the middle, that carries its sugars higher than they ought to run, and that ages a little faster than it should. The careful work has shown this plainly, that chronic short sleep and chronic insomnia both push that cortisol number up, and that the rising number then drags the next night's sleep down, and the round goes. So the stress chemistry is a second real cost. The third real cost, and this one I will speak of plainly, because it is the most surprising, is this. The body's reaction time, when sleep runs short, slows to a degree that the careful work has compared with being legally drunk. After about 17 hours of being awake, a person responds about as poorly on a simple reaction test as a person at the legal alcohol limit for driving. After 24 hours awake, they perform about as poorly as a person well over that limit. This is not a small thing. This is a quiet warning. The car you drive to work, the saw you run at the mill, the child you carry down the stairs in the dark, all of them depend on a reaction time that a short night's sleep quietly takes from you. And the troubling part of it is how badly most folks judge it. People who are sleepy think they are fine. The studies have shown that the body's own sense of how alert it is after a short night is poor. You feel sharper than you are. And that gap, between how alert you feel and how sharp you actually are, is the gap where accidents and bad calls and short tempers live. So the real costs plainly named are 3. The body's handling of sugar, the running of the stress chemistry, and the quiet dulling of the mind and the hands. None of these are punishments. They are simply what a short night costs paid forward into the days. Now the fair question is, what is a body to do? And the fair answer is plain. Give the body most nights what the careful consensus has settled on, which for most grown folks is somewhere between 7 and 9 hours, with 7 being the floor of what the careful folks call good enough. That is not a hard line for every body, and a small honest bit less or a small honest bit more may suit you better, but it is the place on the dial most bodies were built to run from. Go to bed near the same time most nights. Wake near the same time most mornings. Let the body set its rhythm. Let the morning light find you soon after you rise, because the careful work has shown that bright light in the morning helps the body's clock settle and dim the bright screens in the last hour or two of the evening, because the blue light they throw has been shown, in careful work, to push back the body's release of melatonin, the chemical that opens the door to sleepiness, and to lengthen the time it takes to drift off. And if you find yourself lying awake and worrying about not sleeping, get up and go do a quiet, plainer thing in another room until the sleepiness returns. And do not lie there punishing yourself, which is the worst sleep medicine ever made. The plain, unglamorous habits of a steady bedtime and a steady rising and a darkened last hour are more powerful than any ring on the wrist will tell you. And there is also the plain matter of the body's own helpful habit, which I will speak of plainly. Many folks lean on a drink with caffeine in the evening of a long day, and many of those same folks wonder why their nights are lighter than they ought to be. Here is the honest, careful truth of it. Caffeine has a half-life of, on average, about 5 hours in a grown body, which means that half of the caffeine in your 4 o'clock drink is still quietly working in you at 9 o'clock, and a quarter of it is still working near midnight. And that quarter is plenty to push back the body's own sleepiness and pull the morning off. So if your nights are lighter than you would like, and you are taking caffeine in the afternoon, that is the first quiet, honest place to look. So let me draw the whole of it together fairly. The plain, honest truth about sleep is that it is neither the waste the hustlers claim, nor the game the trackers claim. In sensible amount, most nights it is one of the quiet goods of a life, with real effects on the body's handling of sugar, on its stress chemistry, on its memory and its temper, and its very hands. The boast that you can train yourself to need 5 hours is for nearly all of us a boast without foundation. The chase of the perfect score on the ring is a small, quiet thief of the very sleep it claims to measure. Its real downside when it goes short is not just the tiredness of the day, but the slow rearranging of the body's chemistry underneath, in 3 plainly named ways. Know all that plainly and fairly, and then make your own sensible grown-up choice. For most folks, that choice is simply give the body, most nights, the plain, unglamorous 7 to 9 hours it asks, and trust the body's own quiet signs over any chart on a wrist. Now, here is the part nobody makes $1 telling you. This one is a little different, for the money runs a couple of ways. There is money, plenty of it, in selling you the rings and the apps and the mattresses and the sleep gummies and the supplements and the special pillows, all promising you a better night through their small thing, and there is money too on the other side in the selling of restlessness, the podcasts and the courses and the coaching that promises you a great life if you will just rise at 4 and grind, and so quietly sell you the short night that costs you both sleep and sharpness. And the plain, quiet truth sits ignored in the middle, which is this. The real fix for a broken night is not in any ring, nor in any mattress in a box, nor in any coaching that costs $1,000. It is in the plain, unglamorous things: a steady bedtime, a steady rising, a darkened room, a still mind, and an honest hour or two given back by the hustler's evening, which cost nothing and sell nobody anything. I am not telling you there is a conspiracy. I am telling you something plainer, the plain truth that the body was built to sleep, and asked only that you let it, profits no one. So it goes quiet, while both the gummies and the grind are sold loud. Real rest has no salesman. Tell me in the comments below, what is your way with sleep? And how much do you give it on a normal night? Have you ever tried keeping a steady bedtime and found it changed more than you expected? Did the old folks in your family keep a steady hour for bed? And what did they say about the morning? And where did your folks come from? And what did they do about the hour of rest when the day's work was through? The plain, fair truth about our ordinary nights is worth talking over honestly. So, write yours down here. I read every single one. Next video. Since today we talked about sleep and the body's quiet chemistry underneath it, the next one I want to do is on the plain old ways the careful old folks kept their minds sharp and steady through a long working life. Not by chasing a perfect score, but by the plain habits of rest, of reading, of quiet repetition, of work done with the hands that gave the brain its steady edge. Same honest rule: what is true, what is just a nice story, and how the old folks actually did it. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Until then, the next time you find yourself yawning at the wheel or staring at a ceiling at midnight, take it for what it plainly is: your body asking for what it was built to have. Do not let the hustler tell you greatness comes from cutting it. Do not let the ring run your night for you. Give the body its honest hours, mostly, and trust the older wisdom that the night was made for rest, and a body well rested is a body ready for the morning's plain work. The old people kept their hours without charts and without rings and without gummies, and they tended their rest because rest was a respectable thing to tend. And that is a kind of wisdom that does not wear out in any house that still remembers. One last honest word: a steady bed hour without a steady rising hour is only half a discipline. And most of the trouble folks have with their sleep comes not from staying up too late, but from sleeping in too long on the free morning and dragging the next night with them. The body's clock is set more by when you rise than by when you lie down, and a day that begins at 6 will sleep at 10, while a day that begins at 10 will lie awake at 12 and wonder why. So, keep the rising steady even when the bed hour slips a little. And the body will usually bring the bed hour back in line on its own. That is a small, plain thing. And it has more power in it than most of what the rings and the gummies have to sell you. And with that, I will let you go to your night. Steady hour by steady hour, the old way. Plain rest, fairly kept, and no salesman at the door.